Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo! Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What are you doing?
What do you mean?
Just keep it simple.
I'm making the promo.
Just keep it simple. Just say, hey, we're the Brav Bros. Two guys that talk about Bravo.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're the Brav Bros.
No.
Oh.
Dude, stop with the voice. Just keep it simple.
I've seen promos on TV, dude. This is how you get the fans engaged. This is how you get listeners. We're trying to get listeners here. If we just say, oh, we're two dudes that talk about Bravo, people are going to get tired of it already. We need some oomph.
All right, then fine. Let's try to do it with your voice.
Brav Bros.
Good job.
Let's hang out. Let's hang out. And let's talk about what lessons about. Let's hang out. And let's listen to two lesbians shout. Let's hang out. Let's hang out.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Let's Hang Out, the podcast where when we get that feeling, we need consent feeling. You're welcome.
I love how the past few episodes we've done a singing intro.
As many of them as I can now. I'm like, I've got the musical bug.
Healing, baby. I love it.
I did what I could. From the West Coast, I'm Lee Holmes Foster.
And from the East Coast, I'm Ellie Brigida. To those of you who have been with us through this whole journey, thank you as always for listening. If you're a new listener, welcome. We're excited to have you here. And here's what's happening this week.
This week in the Lesdom.
This Week in the Lesdom is a place where we can touch base each episode about things going on with the podcast or otherwise. This is our second week of crowdfunding for our musical podcast. We are so excited. The Flame musical.
And you can follow along. It's also where we'll be dropping new information about casting announcements or how things are going, or, you know, maybe follow us on social medias for like some sneak peeks, previews, teasers, things like that, pictures of us working on some of the stuff. We're so excited. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we cannot thank everyone enough for all the support, and we're excited to keep working on this.
Up next, we also have our Orphan Black Trivia Night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on October 22nd. Can't wait to see all of you there as well. And if you want to get tickets, we have all of our ticket links on our social media accounts.
In the Greater Les universe, the top news that we have to start with, let's talk the Schitt's Creek Emmy sweep.
9
Just
freaking Emmys.
Amazing.
Incredible.
So cool to see. So cool to see all of the support for this super gay little show that we just love
so much. So happy.
So that was amazing. Just literally an incredible response to Schitt's Creek.
Also, Zendaya won an Emmy for her performance in Euphoria. If you haven't seen Euphoria, this Emmy was very well deserved. Incredible show, and the acting is impeccable. So I'm very, very happy for that win as well. And it's also another super gay show. So we're excited.
I guess the question is, could the Emmys get any gayer? And the answer is
no.
They could not.
That's what's happening this week. Back to you, Ellie and Lee.
Thanks, Ellie and Lee. We are so excited to bring you episode 3 of season 4, Pros and Consent. Really nailed the landing on that one. And we are even more excited to be joined today by a special guest. We have Erin Tillman is here. Thank you so much for joining us, Erin.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you. Erin is a sex educator and dating coach. Erin, will you tell us more about all of the many, many things that you do? Because you are a multifaceted entrepreneur.
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, I've done a lot of things. I've been a dating coach for, about 12 years now. So this was Instagram, pre-Tinder, pre-like dating apps, pre-blogs. I sound real old as I say all that.
Wow.
So I've been around for a little while, and in those 12 years, I've done everything from speaking on college campuses around dating safety. I've consulted with dating apps to make them more consensual. I used to run like singles events and speed dating events, which is a whole other, that's its own podcast of hijinks in the singles speed dating realm. I was a
Please make that podcast.
I know, right? That actually would be hilarious. I was a matchmaker for a little bit. Gosh, so many things. And I'm a newly certified sex educator, so I'm super excited to be joining the ranks.
Amazing.
And, I have to say this too, and I think some of the audience will probably relate to this. One of the reasons why I waited so long to get certified was that I feel like there is this intimidation factor around sex and around, body part names. And, there's so many like wrong things we learn in sex ed. Just think about like the sex ed most of us have had when we were in high school and stuff, and it just wasn't great, or it was wrong information. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like, do I want to be doing that? Like, what if I do it wrong? So I avoided it for a long time, and then I'm like, why am I avoiding this? Like, I do know a lot of things and I want to learn more. So here we are. So yay. There you go.
That is awesome. And we are very excited to learn more from you as well. So you recently wrote a book, The Consent Guidebook. We also met you at Squad Fest. You had an incredible panel all about setting boundaries and consent, and that's why we were like, we need more of this. So tell us about your book, The Consent Guidebook, and what it's about.
Okay, well, thank you so much for saying that, by the way. It's so funny because sometimes I forget I wrote a book because it was like in the height of the Me Too movement. And, it was, so the book is called The Consent Guidebook. And basically it's a easy to follow basic guidebook for boundaries. People maybe who are new to the idea of consent. It was if you remember, which how could we forget, the height of the Me Too movement, there was a lot of all these guys were gotcha and like, how dare they? And how do you know? And I've crossed a boundary. Am I supposed to be like canceled now? And all these things.
Right. What, am I never supposed to talk to a woman again ever?
Right. And I mean, and not to bash, cis het men, but I do want to say like, I know a lot of cis het men who have good intentions and really don't know anything. But there is that other category where it was like, women are just so blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, guys, like simmer down and maybe you should listen. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Back in my day, they called that a compliment. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All
sure.
of that.
We know who you mean. It's
Right. Oh my God, that was great. That voice, that was so classic. And like, I feel like that could be its own podcast too, like all the voices and all the phrases of all the things, right? So yeah.
But it's a podcast nobody wants to listen to.
At least our audience.
Nobody wants to hear more of that. We know what it is.
I was going to say it's part of our lives, so we totally know what's coming. But so because of all of that, the Me Too movement, I also have worked in the entertainment industry for about 15 years. So, and a lot of the things that were happening were around, like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby. There were a lot of stories there. And so I'm like, gosh, it seems like, I think we all were like, what is missing here? Why is this happening? Why are all of these stories coming out now? And why was it that so many people felt like they couldn't speak up before? Again, I think we in this room and a lot of your listeners probably know those reasons. It's usually there's a hierarchy at play. For one, there's a power imbalance at play a lot of times. And sometimes, we could get, I don't want to get too deep into that yet, but so because of all those things, I was like, maybe I should write a book about this or just write some thoughts. It started off as thoughts. And let me just say too, it was a really daunting task to decide to write a book about consent because there weren't many at all. Like there's a couple people out there who are, some people who've been in sex ed for a long time, 2 women in particular I can think of, and they've been in the game for a while. But other than them, there really weren't a lot of resources. So I'm like, who am I to write this book? And I'm like, well, someone needs to write something. Like, because no information is not helpful, right? Clearly there is a learning curve disparity here and we need to do. So I wrote the book and I was nervous the whole time writing the book. And then I was nervous when the book was released. And I'm still kind of nervous about it being out there, to be honest. Because I'm like, everyone's going to have an opinion about it. And there's things I missed. And this conversation evolves all the time. It's never done. things I wrote, my book was published 2 years ago, and things are still evolving. So some of the things in my book definitely still ring true, but there's probably some things I would add now if I rewrote it, you know? So I had to let go of all that crap and just say, this still hopefully will be helpful for people. So yeah.
What would you add?
I think I would add more nuance around, well, I have a chapter on digital things and consent. And since the pandemic happened, there's been like a whole new, I mean, I touched on a few things, but there's just a whole bunch of other stuff that we'll probably talk about during this interview, you know, that I would add now that's like, even just me being on Zoom and all these things, I'm like, oh yeah, so that's a thing that people are dealing with now, you know? So that's one example, but yeah, so many different things. So
OnlyFans didn't even exist when this book came out, right? I mean,
I don't think it did. I know. That's the thing. It's just all evolving. And so I will say this too. I mean, consent, because, you know, conversations around consent, conversations around gender, conversations around orientation, conversations around lifestyle, all these things are evolving at such a rapid rate that it's really important that we keep some level of open mind. Like there's no fixed, this is the answer forever. I think that sometimes though that can really overwhelm people because it's this feeling of, I thought it was this term, but like even like the word queer, right? I mean, I'm from a generation where, I mean, I'm 40, 41. So, when I grew up, that word was not great. And so it's totally embraced now. I use it sometimes to describe myself. And, it's a beautiful thing to see that reclaiming of that word. But a lot of people are still like, wait, can we say that word? Like of older generations. So all that to say is just important to be like open to evolving, right? Yeah. In consent, in all of these conversations, it's really important to stay open.
What I also love about that story too, though, is I do think it's something that we're starting to see more of now, is people just saying like, I mean, am I the right person to, fuck it, I'm just gonna write it, I'm just gonna put it out there and I'm just gonna do it. And I think like the thing that I love about it is seeing like people be willing to just sort of like just do the thing, because I mean that's something that like we always try to encourage people to do. If they're like, I wish I could, we're like, just do it. Like totally. You could just do it. And if it doesn't work out, then like at least you tried to do it, and like maybe that helps someone else do it even more, But I also think that especially within groups and like for people with like marginalized identities, that historically I feel like there was just so much more of a barrier. And not to say that there are not still barriers, because there absolutely are, but I just love that like, it's like coming at that and saying like, hey, as a woman, as a queer woman of color, like this book needs to be out there, and like, fuck yeah, I'm the person to write it. Like,
right. Well,
I love it. We love to see it is what I'm saying.
No, thanks. And also, I mean, in addition to that, one of the things that was helpful for me is to remind myself that there will be other people writing other books. And this is one book. This is one choice of a book that people can choose, and so, yay, great. I'm just a part of the conversation rather than not being a part of it at all. And so,
yeah. But so often the books that do get out there, and like if nobody does decide to step up and be that other person, like we get, I mean, I don't want to name what voice we do tend to see a lot of times.
Right.
But it might not be your voice,
Probably
and
not
I think
my
we
voice.
need your voice out there as well. And like, but that's the thing is I think it's so much, it's like becoming so much more of a thing, I think, for people to realize that like, yeah, actually like there might be choices, but like this should be one of them.
Totally. Well, thank you.
This should be one of the options that's out there. So we're glad it is.
Yay, thank you, Lee. Woo.
Also, speaking of voices and other voices, it's not just you in the book, right? So
True.
How did you find the people to interview, and like why did you choose the specific people that you chose?
Thank you for bringing that up. No, that's great. I forgot to mention that when I mentioned the book earlier. So so there's around 40 experts in the book giving advice in the book. So it's not just my voice, because again, I have one perspective. I've lived one life. I see through a certain lens. And so it was really, really, really important to me to have a variety of voices in the book. So there's health teachers, there's sex educators, there's therapists, licensed therapists, doctorates in there. I knew some of these people beforehand, just again, being in the business, the dating, sex industry of coaching business for 12 years. I know a lot of people. And then also I posted something on one of the social medias, maybe all of them, saying, hey, does anyone know of anyone, in the coaching education realm for consent and sex who might want to contribute. And so I got a ton of people who wanted to contribute, which again is like, all the like, does anyone care? Is anyone going to try? And then I was like, okay, good. Yay. I'm not totally embarrassed. People want to do this. People aren't like, ew. So I was really excited about that. But yeah, so I was very humbled by the people who wanted to be a part of it. I mean, I still get a little like emotional thinking about it. It's like, starting from just an idea, again, pre-dating app, pre-social media, to where I am now, where it's like, it means a lot that people believe enough in you and what you're doing to want to be part of it. So I'm just so grateful. So everyone is giving advice, their consent advice, some personal experiences around consent and consent violations, all of those things. So it really, it just adds a layer of depth to the book. So it's not just me talking.
I love it. Can we talk a little bit about what is in the book? So
yes,
what are some tips on setting better boundaries?
So really quickly, so in the book, it's not just sex related consent. It's everything from boundaries with friends, boundaries with family, colleagues, and there definitely is a section or through the book around boundaries with partners, boundaries around sex, pre-consent conversations before, like to decide, is this a good choice for me in terms of intimate partner or intimate, interactions, that kind of thing. Especially in American society, it's kind of just go for it and then think about things later, or go for it, bad things happen, and then, oh no, and then avoid conversations after the bad things happen. The other thing I want to say really quickly, and I go on a ton
Sounds
of
like such a healthy approach.
I mean, but again, one could argue that it's kind of the American way in all ways, sadly, too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, don't deal with things and just, it'll go away. And it's just like, oh.
Well, I feel like even just the American idea of like the fact that consent and boundaries apply to like many situations and relationships. Like I don't feel like that is something that we have quite gotten there yet. It feels like we're still on our way to like really as a society kind of grasping that,
To me, it feels like there's a lot of situations where like people just think consent and boundaries don't exist for anything.
Yeah, totally.
Like if I want it, I can get it. And it's like, no, there's like, it's not just you want it, therefore you get it. Like that's not how this works.
I'm sorry, but this is just the funniest thing because our toddler has literally entered this phase
of
right
I
now
want
that,
it,
like,
now I get it.
it's not just that. It's that when you try to argue with her, everything she says right now, and it's so cute, but it's also like so funny in the context of this conversation is like, if I say like, hey Eloise, like, she'll pick up like the remote and I'm like, Eloise, that's not a toy. Like, no, it is a toy, mommy. Like, Eloise, we can't play with that right now, but I want to, mommy. I'm like, okay, well,
right.
Well, maybe this is actually a good conversation because I have this later. I'm like, how do you start teaching children about setting boundaries?
Oh, yes.
Like, actually, that's
yes.
really hard.
No, and I was just going to say, I mean, it's a good, like, children learn early. This is actually my old health teacher from high school added a quote in my book. And she was like health sex ed, like / because it was a small school. So it's like teach this and this. But she said something like, one of the biggest mistakes we make in our society is that we don't teach children this stuff. And it starts with, go hug creepy Uncle Charlie who they don't want to hug. And maybe they shouldn't be hugging because maybe there's something we don't know, right? We don't know about Uncle Charlie, but why are we forcing our children? So, or even just like you said, a toy or something that isn't the kids. Sure, sometimes it's okay for them to play for it, but maybe that's a good exercise for them to be like, okay, no, that's mommy's, and mommy needs that right now. So those kind of things.
I'm gonna derail us again because we're losing track of the plot here. But Ellie knows how much I just want to take every opportunity to tell us that TikTok is gonna save the world.
Yes,
so,
here we go.
Here's my latest.
Can you make a TikTok jingle? Like every
Yes.
time Lee talks about TikTok, I'm gonna put this jingle into the show.
Oh my god, we really should. I have a problem. So here's my latest thing is like as much as I will get on my soapbox for TikTok these days, the other thing is I'm like 100% will argue that like TikTok's is making me a better parent. And like there are so many people that I follow already that are all about either just like positive parenting techniques, but also like consent and like parenting in a way that like teaches consent. And there's like so many easy ways to do that when they're kids. And like the one that we just started that's my favorite right now is we do the tickle game now, where like you take turns tickling, and the second someone says no or stop, like you stop. And so it's not just like the practicing like the stopping, but it's also like reinforcing for them, like, you know, like every time that she tickles me and you laugh, and then I say stop and she goes stop and she picks her little hands up, and then you say good job listening, Eloise, like good job listening to mommy, great job.
Reinforcement.
And I'm like, but they're such small simple things, and they're also really super adorable.
No, you know, I actually, this is just a reminder, I need to step up my TikTok game, because I actually am doing more on there, but like that, just knowing there's people doing consent, then I get a little competitive and I'm like, what? No, but that's great. That's good to hear. Thank you for that.
I'll send you, I'll follow you and I'll send you some people because they're great and I love them. So.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. But no, like you said,
all
that's
of
great.
that to say, tips for boundaries, is that what we're getting?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but what you just said is, I mean, that's beautiful modeling, right? It's like, you know, reinforcement of good job. Because I think I think that oftentimes in our society, whether we're talking about kids or adults, there's more of a, you did it wrong. There's like a, you know, bad, you did it wrong. And then there's no like reinforcement of the good thing or a teaching of what could be done or should be done. So I think that's really great. So,
plus they tickle you and it's adorable.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring up tickling, because I absolutely hate tickling and always have. And so anytime, like, I feel like tickling for me personally, like, adult to adult is like fully aggressive. Like, but again, that's why like boundaries are so important, because, you know, some people like it. I actually knew a guy who literally, it was like a sexually arousing thing for him to get tickled. And I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. I can't relate, but good for you.
Yeah.
But, you know, but it's like, so it's so important to talk about boundaries. So in the book, How to Talk About Boundaries with Partners, introduction to yes, no, maybe lists, which is, you know, if you know, it usually does, if you were to Google search yes, no, maybe lists, usually that's more sexual things. So I want to be gagged. I want to be spanked. Yes, no, or maybe. You have a list, you write them down, and then you can share, which is actually a fun way to share with your partner boundaries and consent, because it's also a very heavy conversation a lot of times. And I'm doing what I can right now to try to lighten the load with the conversation and make it fun. Because I feel like with everything, again, especially Americans, it's like, if it's not fun, like if it's fun, we'll pay more attention. But if it's not fun, we're like, oh boy, like someone's lecturing at me. So I'm like, okay, then let's make this fun. So yes, no, maybe list is a really fun way to make the conversation fun. There's a chapter on supporting survivors, how to talk to a friend if you pre-COVID, say you're at a bar, or well, depending on what state you're in or what country, if you're in a bar with friends, you see your friend kind of like being a little too aggressive with somebody, like how to talk to your friend in a loving way, you know, because I think it's really important that we not enable people in our lives. I'm a little bit of a hard ass with that. I just think we enable friends and especially family, and so many different conversations, we enable people way too much. And so it just gives, it's like a nonverbal, I agree with what you're doing. And it's like, why are we doing that? Why are we like staying silent with this if we see something happening? So that's the book in a nutshell. It's an easy read. I know that was a lot of stuff I just laid on you that's in the book, but it's actually, I wanted to make it an easy read because again, it's a hard subject. So I just wanted to make it so that it's not like super tedious, you know?
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes.
So when you talk about not enabling people, how would you approach that conversation? Like if that were to happen?
Sure. Like with a friend or family or just someone in your life?
Yeah, with someone in your life who you do not want to enable any behavior that they're doing.
Sure,
How do you start the conversation?
I think it's really important that when you do approach someone, approach them in a way that says that you care about them and you're telling them because you care. So anything that's along the lines of, I mean, let's go on a limb and say it's like your brother or your dad or something. Hey, so I just wanted to say, you know, I know you probably didn't mean this, and I know you have a big heart, and I know that your intentions were probably good, but I just want to tell you that I just kind of noticed this thing that just happened. And I just want to let you know, because I know you don't want to come across that way. And I know you wouldn't want to hurt someone. So you appeal to someone's sense of decency And, you know, even if your brother or dad is a total jerk, you're still appealing to their sense of,
Yeah.
oh, wow, okay, like my daughter is saying that she thinks I'm great, and it stops someone in their tracks. The other thing that you could do, and usually this is something that's maybe like more of a friend or a colleague. Actually, we work for family too, but I'll usually just ask someone to repeat what they said. Like if they said something, if it not an action you witnessed, but if they say something to you that's misogynistic or racist or whatever the thing is, or unconsensual, or a bragging about something they did in a conversation with you, what did you say? Wait, I'm not sure I heard what you said. And so again, that stops somebody and makes them kind of check themselves, and it makes them think, oh, wow, this person's questioning me now. And usually for me and my experiences in coaching people and just personal experiences too, usually it's like you almost don't even need to say too much more. It's almost like you help them catch themselves and like, oh, maybe that wasn't okay. Because I just feel like so often we're in an echo chamber. I mean, even for myself, like in the last few months, I've really had to let go of a lot of people who it just was toxic things I was seeing on social media or in real life conversations. I'm like, this is not a productive interaction, and it's hurting me in some way. Before we get to that place though, where we have to cut people out, if there is someone you feel like is open to hearing something new, just giving them a gentle nudge of, hey, I don't know if you knew that thing that you said, it kind of landed a little funny. And I just want to let you know that, you know, because again, there's so many people who are just like, yeah, that's right, I'm with you, and F those people. And it's like, no, like it's important that we bring up something that is contrary to what someone might be hearing that might be problematic or dangerous, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's also, I think it gives you a good way to sort of suss out, you know, like we talked earlier on about kind of like, oh, we know like there's like two different kind of categories that like people are going to fall into. And I think that's like an easy way to suss out, because it is one of the things that's interesting to me is that like for our culture and our society, like especially in the US, where I do think that we just have like really poor education around boundaries, it's also something that people get really defensive about very quickly, like which I find interesting, you know. And so I think that that you can immediately tell, like, because it's kind of like it's a real quick like empathy check almost, you know, to be like, if I approach it from a way that kind of like gives you a soft landing for this, are you gonna immediately hit a place of like, oh, they don't think I'm a bad person, but a thing that I said, you know, maybe came across the wrong way? Or are you just going to be immediately hit with like that, I don't understand the concept of boundaries, those don't exist to me, and like therefore what you're saying is like the worst thing I've ever heard in my life? And I feel like that kind of approach to it is really quickly gonna differentiate between those two types of people, you know?
Well, and it's the whole thing of someone's telling me I'm bad, and
right.
I don't know how to fix it because, like you said, there's not a lot of education. So now when someone's just telling me I did something bad, I'm a bad person, and that's the end. And so, I want to say too, a couple things. I'm reading a book called Nonviolent Communication. I'm drawing a blank on the author's name right now, but it's really great. And it actually talks about these things, like how to communicate where you're not turning someone off to the place where they can't listen anymore or not open to listening or hearing you. Really great book. I'm only like 100 pages in. I'm sure it gets better, but so far I'm very impressed, and it talks about this. The other thing is, I feel like I've been in so many conversations recently around cancel culture. Cancel culture, let's talk about it. So, during the Me Too movement, the height of it, shout out to Tarana Burke, because I'm so glad she finally got some credit for coining that term, Me Too movement, way back before 2017 or what have you. But I feel like that was kind of when cancel culture, the term really kind of became a huge thing, because it was like, a lot of, let's be honest about it, a lot of cis men were being called out on Twitter and other platforms. Oh, this dude did this to me, either in the entertainment industry or not, or wherever, or in all industries, really. It wasn't just entertainment, but a lot of it was entertainment. The argument that I hear so often is, do people deserve a chance for redemption? And the argument is that cancel culture does not give someone the opportunity to redeem themselves. My argument is that I'm all for redemption. I am even in my personal life, if someone does something that is hurtful, mm-hmm. I always leave the door open for some sort of resolution. If the person is willing to humble themselves and apologize, admit some mistake, have a conversation, So for me, the people getting canceled are the ones not even trying. And so for me, I don't feel bad for those people. Because generally speaking, also, let's say that the people getting canceled, it's not just one thing that's happened. It's like a huge, like 80 people or 30 years of something, and people knew, and there were enablers and, people protecting people. It's like, does that person, I don't know. I mean, again, I think people can change given some very specific small circumstances. Big changes can happen in people, but people have to want it. And I don't think people deserve a chance if they're not even willing to accept the fact that maybe they did harm. I think that's really dangerous. And I don't think it's productive or for the victim/survivor if we're just not even trying to, like, I don't want to say punish, but if there's no sort of checks and balances and
Yes.
I can't think of another word other than punishment. I don't want to say punishment, though.
Consequences.
There you go. That's the word. Thank you very much, Lee. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like cancel culture is basically the answer to people not having consequences. That's the answer. The answer is public shame in the form of canceling on social media. And guess what, everybody? I know it's not pleasant, and I know it can be destructive, but just think about the people who've been actually harmed. In that perspective, it's less than the harm that was done potentially. So
I am going to stop us real quick just because I want to take a quick break. I want us to come right back because I want to keep digging into cancel culture because I have so many thoughts about this. So
Hey, do you like true crime? Me too. And I know what you're thinking. There's so many true crime pods out there, you've already heard all the stories. Well, what if I were to tell you you're wrong? I'm Leroy Luna, the host of Excuse Me, That's Illegal, the podcast that takes a hardcore look at softcore crime. I've got a back catalog of hundreds of bizarre and hilarious stories just waiting to be heard by you. So come join me. Excuse Me, That's Illegal is available anywhere you get your favorite podcasts, with new episodes dropping on the 10th, 20th, and 30th every month, baby!
Hi, I'm Jennifer, a founder of the Go Kid Go network. At Go Kid Go, putting kids first is at the heart of every show that we produce. That's why we're so excited to introduce a brand new show to our network called The Search for the Silver Lining, a fantasy adventure series about a spirited young girl named Isla who time travels to the mythical land of Camelot. Look for The Search for the Silver Lining on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart-Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us and lose yourself in someone's only one story. The Only One in the Room has a wide variety of guests, from prisoners to abuse survivors to swingers. With 21 seasons and counting, we guarantee that Only One in the Room will have a story that you'll connect with. This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone.
There's a lot going on right now. Mounting economic inequality, threats to democracy, environmental disaster, the sour stench of chaos in the air. I'm Brooke Gladstone, host of WNYC's On the Media. Want to understand the reasons and the meanings of the narratives that led us here, and maybe how to head them off at the pass? That's On the Media's specialty. Take a listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be right back. So I'm going to jump us back in with the conversation that we're having about cancel culture, because I think, you touched on something that I actually think would be really interesting, because I know, we're approaching a lot of this conversation from, like, setting boundaries and consent and all of these things. The cancel culture topic, and especially because it is one that comes up a lot, I think, in the queer community, and it's something that we've been seeing happen. I could just name so many situations that I'm not going to right now that have happened recently that have brought up a lot of these issues. And one of the things that I would love to hear is if you also have tips sort of coming from the other side of how do you as a person be open to being corrected, right? Because like we've been saying, how are ways to approach someone to correct them gently? How do you, because I think, most of us are going to find ourselves in this situation at one time or another. And I think that what you're saying is completely correct. Like the way that you avoid the consequence being like total cancellation is like be open and receptive to critiques, to feedback, to hearing that something you did maybe hurt someone. What are ways that we can try to hear things differently and to like, you know, take things as opportunities to grow as opposed to just like, you know, getting shut down?
Yeah, great question. Number one is empathy. And I want to say this too, and I've been pretty vocal about this on my social media pages, but I'm not a religious person, but I was raised with like Christian things, do unto others and such. The full phrase, if anyone doesn't know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I see a lot of Christian people who are doing a lot of bad things to people and saying a lot of really gross things that aren't love thy neighbor. And so for me, number one is empathy. And so if you could put yourself in the shoes of the other person, like whether you know them or not, you see a scenario, you hear about a scenario, rather than jump on the train of, yeah, that person got a raw deal, put yourself on the other side of it. Like, how would I feel if somebody came up to me and touched me a certain way or said something to me that was like super, super, you know, violent, let's say, violence with words? How would that make me feel? So the empathy and the willingness to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else is step one, I feel like. Now, I'm not a therapist. I feel like some therapists could say that some people don't have that ability as much as others to be empathetic. But I think if you do have the capacity, that's a great first step. The number two, I like lists. I'll probably forget what number I'm on at some point, but here we go. Number two, I think it's really important to get comfortable hearing no, saying no and hearing no. But since we're talking about one specific side of this, hearing no, especially because I work in consent and boundaries and things, you would think I'd be like a pro at this. Even it's hard to hear no. It's just hard. Like, we're not taught from a young age to be okay, really be all right with, oh my God, they said no, thank you. I mean, in my adult years with friends and colleagues, I've learned the phrase, thank you for taking care of yourself, which is, you know, it's kind of a, like if somebody said that in real life, oh, Erin, thank you for taking care of yourself. Like, it sounds a little like rehearsed to me, but something along those lines is really great. So practicing saying and hearing no is great. Now, again, I want to put a little asterisk by this and say, I super nerd out on these kind of things. So these are things I do practice with friends and my partner and certain things. And so it's fun for me as an exercise to practice. Again, I know not everyone will try it, but if you are listening to this and you would like to try this, or you know someone in your life who maybe could really, really benefit from these things, practice hearing no and really sitting in the no and being aware of the feeling that you feel when you hear it. Because usually there is some feeling of how dare they, or oh, I didn't get what I want, or back to children, right? I mean, at our basic level, adults are childlike in certain emotional reactions. And so it's very much that reactive feeling of, oh, I can't believe it. It's like, okay, so let's reframe the no as somebody is saying to you that something for them is not comfortable about this thing. And again, because I'm piggybacking on that, because there's so much sexual shame in this country, and really, let's say in general, the world, that's not, depending on what country you are, let's say that, because some countries are very open about sex and some are not. So if we're in a space that's shameful about sex, it makes you feel bad about it, then sex becomes this whole, if we're talking about consent with sex, then sex becomes this whole thing, this crazy, this goal we have to get to. And oh my gosh, everyone says that it will be amazing if I have sex with this person, or this person says yes to me. So then if they don't say yes to you, then it's this whole heightened thing of they rejected me. That must mean that I'm not good enough. That must mean there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with them. How dare they? So we need to reframe the no, hearing the no as, oh, wow, okay, someone's saying no to this thing. Maybe that means there's someone else out there who is a yes to me, or the same person might be a yes to certain things, but just not the thing I asked for. So it's a reframing of no as not a personal attack, but more as a redirection with that person, or redirection to someone else who's more aligned with what we want or what we're interested in. Did I have a number 3?
I know. I lost track of the numbers too. I love the idea of a redirection because I feel like to a lot of people, it feels like the no is a dead end. The no is like a wall that you have hit. There's nowhere else to go from there. Therefore, you are like, all right, this is horrible. But let's say like you're interested in someone and you want to kiss them and they say no, but you still think they're a cool person. That's a redirection to romantically we're not a match, but maybe we still could have a platonic relationship, and that's a redirection of that relationship. It's not, all right, goodbye to that person forever. Or maybe it is, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. I want to add, thank you for saying that. Like, I want to add to that real quick. In a scenario where, so we're going to shift the focus back on the person who might be saying no rather than receiving no. So if you're the one saying no to somebody or something, and maybe you do like them, like you said, Ellie, there's something you like about that person, you're saying no to intercourse, but maybe there's something else. Maybe you're a yes to kissing and cuddling. It's hard because I'm stopping myself because I don't want it to feel like that someone has to put another offer on the table. A no should just be a no if that's what you want. But also I do feel like in this conversation, it's really important also to think about what you actually want. Maybe you do actually like this person and would like to spend time with them. So if that's the case, then put another offer on the table, so to speak. So I'm a no to intercourse, but oh my gosh, I really would love to cuddle with you right now. That is really exciting to me. So then the person receiving the no or the redirection, so to speak, is hearing, oh, okay, well, they're not totally not into me. It's like, oh, they still want to like hang out with me and they're still interested in me in some way. Just like if maybe somebody was like, oh my God, Lee, I want to go on a super fancy dinner date with you. But it's like an hour or 2 away and I have to pick you up and all these things. And you were like, oh, well, gosh, I thought we could just go for coffee or something. So then it's like, well, gosh, Erin, I'm not really super into that. That's, I don't know if whatever. You don't even have to qualify why. Wow, that's really great. How about could we do a coffee instead? Like, is that just to start out or something like that? Then it's like, oh my God, okay, so I know Lee's somewhat interested on some level. I don't know what yet. Could just be friendship. She could be interested in me, romantically. I don't know, but it's not a flat no. But again, the asterisk here, I want to just say if you are a total no to what someone's proposing to you, totally fine and stick with that. I'm just saying that I feel like a lot of times there's these nuancy places where it's like, oh, I said no to that person and now they're not asking me out again or something, or they think I'm not interested. And it's like, no. So just gently say no to that, but maybe leave the door open for something else.
Well, and I love that framing of of the redirection, Ellie, too, because I think, when you were just saying before, Erin, about cancel culture, kind of like the higher level discussion of cancel culture and things like that, I think something that everyone kind of struggles with about the idea of cancel culture is that you don't want to feel like you're not giving people a chance, but I think that there's something about teaching ourselves to see that initial no or that initial calling out as the redirection, as the opportunity to do something different or do something better, and not just, immediately taking it as like, oh, someone said I did something wrong and therefore they're telling me I'm a horrible person and I don't have any chance to redeem myself and nobody's ever going to listen to anything I say ever again. But, rather taking it as like, oh, someone pointed something out and here's an opportunity for me to do better somehow, and I think a lot of people, and especially the people that you do end up seeing kind of, being canceled in one way or another, are the people that that don't see it as an opportunity or aren't willing to take that opportunity, and just kind of only react from like that defensive place instead.
Well, it's the feeling of what my interactions, especially during my book, what those interactions of people who are more like, how dare, people are too sensitive and that kind of thing. It's that feeling of everything's changing. What we used to do back in the day. I was in an interview with somebody who's from let's say the baby boomer generation and super conservative. I went on the show because I was like, I don't want to, because you know what? Because I like these conversations and I don't want to be in a bubble. I like the opportunity potentially to change somebody's mind or plant a seed. That's why I went on the show. Anyway, it was a shit show. Anyway, the point is, I did. I tried real hard. At some point, I might post some of the footage because it was video too, and I held my own, but it was rough. It was rough. One of the hardest interviews I've ever done. But I remember the guy said a few times, he was like, you know, I just know. I don't need consent. I just know when a woman's interested. And I said, how do you know? And he's like, I just know. And I said, how do you know? He's like, I just know. I said, but do you really? Do you know? He was like, yeah. I said, I guarantee that you don't know all the time. I guarantee it. You know, and it went back and forth for a while. And I gave some other examples and stuff. And
now, listeners, you can't see this, but I'm currently deceased on the floor at this conversation.
But so that's the thing, though. I mean, and I'm not saying, like, I know some amazing baby boomers who are really open to these ideas and really want their interactions, especially sexual ones, to be consensual and loving and caring and beneficial for everyone involved. But there is this feeling of, okay, it used to be this way. The rules are changing, and I'm not fully sure what the new rules are. So now it's like things are changing. I'm going to do it wrong, and then I might be punished forever if I do it wrong. So I feel like on some level it is a little bit of an irrational fear. Having said that, if something was done a certain way your whole life, and then all of a sudden there's this new thing, and because it is nuanced in certain ways. Listen, the point is, don't touch people if you don't know if they want to be touched or whatever. That's just one example. But also there can be nuances, you know, and I don't want to bring them up again, so I won't bring them up by name. But there was a comedian where there was a quote unquote bad date that was published in a blog, and you know, I did feel a little bad for him because I'm like, gosh, you know, I feel like both parties here kind of screwed it up a little bit. If there was just even more communication on both levels or even one level, I think this could have been avoided because it seemed like they kind of did like each other. And it wasn't like this whole, like, someone lurking in the bushes situation. And so.
But you both have to be taught that, you know? I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, especially, God, you know, if we're going to talk like baby boomers, I mean, good Lord, I'm like, don't catch me letting my daughters watch a rom-com from the 80s anytime before they're like adults because Jesus Christ, I'm like, you watch these movies that, you know, for us, I'm like, sure, nostalgically, I can still enjoy them, but you look at what they taught us about romance and dating and how do you get the girl. It's like, oh, you beat her down enough over the course of an hour and a half feature film until you, like, you know, force yourself into a kiss at the end, and suddenly she's in love with you and had been the whole time, and you're like, this isn't reinforcing great things.
So many of those are so painful when it's like
they're so bad.
Like,
totally.
Even like,
I mean, yeah.
Even like when they have the nerd character who's like harmless, and I'm like, but he's also super aggressive. Like with with his
the 80s movies.
They're really bad.
I know, so many are. I actually like watching some of those movies too, and some of them I hadn't seen in a while. And during the pandemic, I was watching more like childhood movies from the 80s, and some of them I was just like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I can really enjoy this anymore. And that's the thing too. It's like I don't want to
different,
right? But I don't want to be like again, wrote a book on consent, me over here, and yet I still don't want to. I still want to enjoy entertainment. Like I still want to be able to enjoy certain songs and I don't want to cancel all of those things, especially if it is some sort of art. And also I think it's like I just watched this movie's rough, and I can't believe I'm actually going to bring it up here. Whatever. I love the movie Showgirls.
We can cut it later. Don't worry. Just put it out.
What's it called?
The movie Showgirls. And there's a lot of real problematic things in that movie, but it's fantastical. I love Vegas. It's super fun. Elizabeth Berkley, I love her so much. She took a risk doing that movie. Anyway, I have so many personal feelings about like the industry and her in that, and like her being kind of like shoved aside and not given jobs because of it. Like, I think that's horrific. But then also like there's some real like, you know, tropey, like stereotypical things in that movie too that were pretty bad. But so should I not watch that movie? I don't know. Again, and I feel like there's not an answer though. There's not one answer to this. It's like, and also I just feel like we are in a time where it's kind of an either or society, which I hate. I feel like why can't, like, I love, my mom and I were just talking, like, I love Venn diagrams. So the Venn diagram, right? Like, I feel like I'm usually in this middle section of where the two circles intersect, because there are some things that are black and white, but there's so many things that aren't. And there's so many things that are case by case. Also context, and also, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's just so many, I wish we could, how about this? I wish that we could use our critical thinking brains a little bit more with some of this stuff. And also the goal here is to make sure everyone feels safe. That's the goal. So that's the thing. I mean, I think that probably if there wasn't such a putting blinders on to actual trauma that's happening, I think we probably could enjoy these 80s movies a little more, because it's like, oh, we're dealing with these things in society. Yay, look at us. We're actually like teaching consent education, all these things, so we can enjoy these movies as just movies, rather than like watch these movies and see and know that these things, these horrific things we're watching actually happen in real life as well. There's no separation.
Watch them as like, you know, instruction manuals.
Yes.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, I really want to talk a little bit about consent and boundaries during COVID. Like, that's a broad thing, but primarily with digital, because we're on Zoom, we're talking to our friends via text instead of in person, but there's still boundaries that need to be set.
So as I said before, this is probably something I would add to my book if I was writing it again or did a second edition. So number one, I think it's really important to be aware of people's time, because I think that there's this assumption, oh, we're all at home and we're not working, but that's not true. Some people are still working from home. And some like this is great. And I'm so happy to see your faces. And also it still takes energy. Like, yep. I'm a total extrovert. Before COVID, I was like at bars, I was at concerts, I was out doing stuff. Sometimes if I'm on my second or third Zoom for the day, I'm like, I'm effing exhausted. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to be aware of people's time, even if you're on a virtual date or even virtually with friends or what have you. I think it's really important to just be aware of time, and also for self, set boundaries around time. It's totally okay to be like, listen, I have 30 minutes. Listen, I have an hour. Oh my gosh, I have to go like do this other thing, but let's do this again soon. Great. You know, but it can't just be this thing that lasts forever and ever and ever. One of you is like, I got to get out of this Zoom. Number two, here I go. 1 and 2. Let's see how long that lasts. Number 2 is really important to not send unsolicited anything. So pics, you appear and you're, you know, shirtless or pantsless. Like, don't do that. Like, why are we doing this? So, I mean, it's because it's a really weird thing to be virtual, right? It feels personal in a lot of ways. And there's also this barrier of realness, this virtual reality of sorts, right? Where it's like, well, I'm not in person, so maybe I could get away with a little bit more because, you know, I can just leave or go away or turn off my computer or my iPhone, and then they'll never know or they won't remember. No, they'll remember, and don't do that. Like, it's really important to still be aware. And again, whatever consent conversations you'd have in person, it's really important to have those still virtually. That's the only thing that stands out to me right now. And those,
I think that's good. The biggest thing for me is the time.
Totally.
Because like right now, I feel like I am swamped. Like, I am constantly busy, and it feels like everyone's busy, but it feels like people are like, talk to me, come hang out with me. Like, I haven't seen you in so long. Like, let's spend time together. And there's a part of you that's like, yes, I would love to see you. Like, you're my friend and I enjoy your company. However, I only have so much time.
Exactly. No, exactly. We only have so much time, and even though it's virtual, it's still our time. So it's really important.
It's still time, yes.
Let me see. Also, I think it's really important to say too, I think, especially let's say you have a virtual date with somebody and Zoom, like for example, Zoom, I don't know if I shouldn't be shouting out certain platforms' names or whatever, but it does say you're recording. I think it's really important that you not just record someone, ask them if you can record something or take a picture of something. And some people, depending on the level of dating that you're doing virtually, would say, yeah, it's okay, go for it. But it's really important that even if it's just like, oh, I'm just going to sneak a photo, like, you know, like digital things are never deleted for real, like never really deleted, I should say. So it's really important to try to respect people's boundaries around that.
Just because China has all our TikToks doesn't mean that you get to have everything you want.
Exactly. Just like, what's his name just got hacked with a dick pic. I don't know how it happened.
Oh yeah, Chris Evans.
Yeah.
Well,
and
he didn't get hacked. He like accidentally posted.
See, we don't know. Maybe he was on a date and was like, just for you. And then something happened.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's why you shouldn't send them, Chris.
Or ask
They'll go on
first
Twitter.
and
Yeah.
just make sure you really want that picture out there forever. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, yes. Solicited is okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say too, I mean, we actually did talk about this briefly in email. It was, what are some unique challenges that the LGBTQ community are more likely to face with consent? I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Number one that stood out to me that comes up all the time in my circles is pronouns. And that, I feel like it's such a basic thing. I don't know why this is a problem, but for me, it definitely falls under consent for sure. It's like if somebody is telling you, hey, these are my pronouns, just use the pronouns. Can we not, like, why is this so hard? Like, who cares? Please just use the pronouns the person wants to use. Also, I mean, the consent around safety too. And I mean, obviously sexual, but not obviously. I mean, bars, I know from a few gay men friends, it's just like constant, well, when we were in bars together or when they were in bars together, touching, grabbing, and because there's somebody just told me the other day, they're like, yeah, I'm really tired of this feeling of just because I'm in a space, that means I can be touched. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to just call out gay men, though. I mean, you could sometimes in like parties that are like sexy parties or, parties where there could be some level of nakedness, those type scenarios. Like sometimes there is an assumption that because you're in the space, oh, you're just up for the taking. And that shouldn't be the case, regardless of whatever, how you present, what your gender is, what your lifestyle is, all the categories, not okay. Yeah, that's just, I wanted to touch on those real quick.
I love that too. I think I want to talk a little bit about LGBTQ community boundaries that, Lee, I feel like you'll get also as queer women is also time with your partner.
Oh.
And time apart from your partner.
Oh.
Like there's this what do they call it? The lesbian urge to merge.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But, especially with COVID, where maybe you're living with your partner and even if you were living together before, you were going to work, you were going out on the weekends, you were doing other things. So setting time and space and boundaries for time apart, even when you're both in the same house.
Totally.
And like, it's okay to take some time apart. And that's just, I think, a really good, I don't know. I think about this with relationships a lot of like, I think a lot, especially in America, when you're in a relationship, there is an assumption that there are certain things expected of you when really what we need to be doing is negotiating with each individual partner. What are the expectations for this relationship?
For sure.
Because that, I think, is an issue, just like when you're in a relationship in general, of like one partner thinks, oh, well, we're together, therefore this means this. And the other one's like, we're together, so this means this. And you're like, actually, we're on different pages here.
Yeah, a lawyer.
I think that's like a lot of things.
A lawyer might say that there's not a meeting of the minds. And so that's why it's really important to communicate, especially, I mean, listen, what you were in a relationship before COVID, the things that are happening during COVID, that probably wasn't what your relationship was dealing with before COVID. So you probably weren't together all the time before COVID. You probably weren't like, I mean, so yeah, it's like a renegotiating and an upping of the communication with the current partner during a pandemic, because it is nuts. Like, this is new territory for all of us. We're still trying to figure it out. Who knows how long this thing is going to last? Oh my God. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, it's really important to talk about these things and just kind of check in and see, where are we now? Like, do you want to talk about like how much time we're spending? Like, do you need space? Like, am I annoying you? Because I feel like you're a little annoyed with me today. Like, do you just let me know? Just please let me know if you need space. Let's talk about things like that kind of thing. Really quick too, I wanted to say that COVID is huge. Boundaries with COVID. For anyone who's single and listening. Or I just was actually on a podcast recently. It was a polyamory podcast, and it was a conversation around COVID and what do you do with your other partners if you're quarantined with a partner, and then the other partners are not in your pod, and then you like maybe your primary partner doesn't want you to see the other people because you're breaking the conversations. Please have all the conversations. And it's that is boundaries. That is consent, and those are boundaries. If somebody is not comfortable with you going to sit and eat at a restaurant and you're quarantined with them, like, it's really important that you respect them, even if it seems stupid to you. Like, if you're dating somebody or just meeting someone that you want to date and they're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm really nervous about going to this place. Like, don't shame them and make them feel bad for not wanting to go somewhere. Also, you don't know what someone's health situation is. They could be immune compromised, but even if they aren't, don't make them feel bad. That is a choice, and that is their boundary. And that, like, literally, if you can't get past the COVID boundary, then how are you going to get to the other boundaries of like sex stuff?
Well, and I think I actually think that's like a great way to tie this all up, because I love what you just said about like that is consent. And I think that's like a good ending, is like communication is consent. Like that's the takeaway here, y'all. That's what we're going for.
Yes.
So I'm good. I like that. That's a good happy bow on this, I think.
I love it.
Excellent.
There's boundaries and consent in every single day of your life that you should be negotiating.
And here's a quick tip. Practice speaking, writing down your boundaries, speaking about your boundaries, practice saying no, practice hearing no from people. Those things are really important. And bottom line for me is, if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, no matter how little they are or how silly they think it is, you got to let them go. And I know that's easy to say. And I know sometimes it's more complicated if you're married, if you have kids, if known someone 20 years, but really that is, if someone can't respect the fundamental truth of you feeling safe, and no matter how insignificant a scenario, that is not a loving way to treat somebody, and you got to get out of there.
Love it.
Does that mean it's
All
time,
right,
Ellie?
It's time. It's time for our Q and Gay.
Woo!
Q and gay.
So we're going to ask you some multiple choice yes or no questions. We're going to put them on our Twitter for our followers to answer as well. So here we go. Question number 1. How often do you set boundaries with your partner? A, once a week. B, every day. C, once a month. Or D, whenever we need to.
Okay, this feels like a test, and I hate tests. I'm in another certification for sex ed stuff, and I'm like, every week there's a test. I'm like, I hate tests. School
There's no wrong answers here.
True,
There's
and that
no
makes
wrong
me feel
answers.
that makes me feel way better. So I'll go D, whenever we need to, or something.
Great. Yes. Keeping one open-ended.
Question 2. What are you most often setting boundaries about? A, physical space. B, topics of conversation. C, sex. Or
I would say probably D, time. We're both busy people.
In what area of your life do you have the hardest time setting boundaries? A, family. B, friends. C, work. Or D, intimate relationships?
Definitely work. C. Definitely. I work too much. I take too many things on, and then I get FOMO all the time if I'm not taking everything. So it's a problem for sure.
I get it.
So it's an opportunity to grow. That's what we're going with, okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Question 4. When did you first learn about healthy boundaries? A, as a toddler. B, elementary or high school. C, in college. Or D, in adulthood?
Whatever B was, it's
elementary, high school.
Yeah, I'll go with that one, because I remember, and I was with family, because I remember my grandfather, I was eating like Captain Crunch or something, like just on a, like, I like to eat it dry without milk. And I remember he was like, give me some. And my grandmother was like, don't you do that, because you're the first example of a man with her. And you can't just take something from her like that without asking. My mom reminds me of that all the time. And so like the ladies in my life, family, woo, preaching and teaching lessons. Yes.
I love it. All right. Question number 5. Are you dating during COVID? A, yes, I found my soulmate. B, yes, with many people. C, no. Or D, I already have a significant other.
I'm gonna go with D. Significant other.
Remember, you can give us your own answers to this episode's Q&A questions on our Twitter at Let's Hang Out Pod. Erin, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I learned a lot, and I know our listeners did too.
Yay! It was a pleasure to be here. My website is thedatingadvicegirl.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at datingadvice GRL, dating advice girl, no I in the word girl. And I'm on TikTok, but again, I need to build that up a little bit because the kids are killing it on there. The kids are killing it.
And tell people where they can find your book, and also because you have your own podcast as well. So
I do. Mine is not as consistent as yours is. I've been doing it for, about 8 years or so, off and on. And I used to interview celebrities and all kinds of stuff. But as we talked before, it's a lot of work and I do way too many things. So if I have an interesting topic, I'll pop in with an episode. It's called the Dating Advice Girl Podcast. It's on iTunes and all the things, wherever you get your podcasts. And my book is the Consent Guide book. It's on my website, thedatingadvicegirl.com, and also on its own website, theconsentguidebook.com.
Second edition possibly coming eventually. Who knows?
With a bunch of digital editions.
Right? I love it.
I love it. And Erin will also be doing an Instagram story takeover on October 8th, so make sure you send in all your questions. Erin, thank you so much for hanging out with us yet again.
This has been amazing.
Yay!
Let me hear you say hip, 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 well, yeah.
We love hearing from you and building community, so we want to shout out some of our favorite things each episode. I would like to shout out somebody who reached out on Instagram, that is Megan, who agrees that Xena should get rid of all the male love interests.
Correct.
We obviously agree with you. So thank you. She started watching Xena because of our recommendation and, was like, yeah, gay. And then saw the men who came randomly in and was very upset, as we all are. So we feel you, Megan.
Yeah. I agree. Get me the reboot of Xena that has no men, still features Lucy Lawless and Renee O'Connor. That's what I want. That's what my 2020 needs, really, to turn.
I'm for it. Also, if you have any other should have been gays, we keep getting some suggestions and they're all impeccable. So please email them to us, message us. We love it.
Amazing. Also, we would like to thank, as always, our Lesbian Jesus patrons, Mark Foster,
Just Klaus,
Tanya Ferguson,
Danny Griswold,
Jacqueline Rose Nishino,
Sarah and Julia,
Carrie Ann Lawrence,
Danny Gunlock Tamora,
Brittany Ray,
Alana Rosen,
and Tara Gleason.
And our King Princess patrons, Amy and Ellen,
Leah Henley,
Liz Chen,
and Wendy K. Bartlett. Thank you all so much. You help make this podcast possible.
Remember, you can also find us on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Let's Hang Out Pod.
You can email us at letshangoutpod@gmail.com.
Or you can check out our website at letshangoutpod.com.
Make sure that you subscribe on whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. That way you'll get new episodes as soon as they go up.
We're also posting some videos on our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe at youtube.com/letshangoutpod to catch them.
If you want to help support the podcast, there are so many ways that you can do that. The first is you could rate and review us on the Apple Podcasts app. A, we love reading the reviews. B, it helps new people find the podcast. The other one is you could just tell people. Tell your friends about the podcast. Tell them to listen.
Tell them all. If you want to support us financially, you can do that at bit.ly/lespatreon. We love all our patrons. We hang out in our Discord chat. We just had our Les Essentials watch party last weekend, and we also have ad-free episodes. If you're sick of all our ads, it's okay, I get it. But you can join us at bit.ly/lespatreon, and you don't have to hear them again. It's amazing.
You can also check out our TeePublic at bit.ly/lesshop. We have so many designs. You can get them on tees, on tanks, on pillows if you want. I mean, there's all sorts of good stuff in there. So you can check it out. It's a fun way to, spruce up your quarantine wardrobe a little bit. Change things up.
Switch it up. You can also follow us individually. You can find me at Ellie Brigida on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at LSH Foster.
With that, I'm Ellie.
And I'm Lee.
And
let's hang out again soon.
Let's hang out.
Listening to a podcast should be time well spent, and I promise it will be if you'll give this podcast a try. It's called Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and in every episode, I talk with leading experts on topics I know you will find fascinating. From why people can't keep secrets, what your favorite music says about you, why your pet acts in strange ways, and so much more. Something You Should Know is designed to give you information you can use in your life and give you great intel that you can share with others. I'm told it's a binge-worthy podcast, and with over 1,000 episodes, there's a lot to binge on. Something You Should Know has been ranked in the top of the Apple Podcast charts consistently for a long time. I know you're going to like this. I just need to get you to try it. Something You Should Know. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts.